segregation in housing was really an important issue at the time. White landlords refused to rent apartments to blacks. So after some negotiation was not successful, we organized a demonstration. We took a busload of people and picketed outside of the head of the Westchester Board of Realtors' home on a Sunday afternoon. Well, that got their attention, and after a while, we saw a change in their practices. The same with the issue of segregation. Westchester had the segregated school system, and also the system didn't play the same amount of money was spent on low-income black neighborhood schools. And so we met with the chairman of the school board who said, we don't believe that Woodson and his small band of radicals represent the Westchester black community. We know our people. So we took his statement, "We know our people," and put it on picket signs, and we organized over 1,000 protesters who stood silently on the steps of the courthouse in Westchester. And then finally, after that protest, they conceded, they hired a black principal, and also they moved to desegregate the schools.
No government has been able to do for people what people have been able to do for themselves when they have that opportunity.
The American society as a whole can never achieve the outer reaches of its potential so long as it tolerates the inner cities of despair.
The American dream is not to make everyone level with everyone else, but to create the opportunity for all people to reach as high as their God-given potential allows.
Jack was a star from the day he walked into the house.
I've always thought that it does go back to Jack working as a football player and a quarterback who had to inspire his teammates. And there was a sense of inspiring us.
There are no limits to our future as long as we don't limit our people.
Jack's public career began in professional football, carried him to the U.S. House of Representatives, through presidential primaries, and eventually to the Republican ticket as Bob Dole's vice presidential running mate in 1996. This was probably the most influential person of his time who was not president.
I'll tell you, in 1961, we were going to Dallas to play with the Chargers, and we weren't allowed in the Hilton in Dallas. And the owner of the team owned the hotel. So they said, okay, the white guys can stay at the Hilton, but the black guys, you have to go to Grand Prairie. And Jack Kemp went to Sid Gilman and said, this is not acceptable. Either we stay as a team or we don't play. And Jack Kemp was the guy that actually did it. We all ended up in the crappiest hotel in Grand Prairie, Texas, because of Kemp.
Over the years, we did a lot of events together on tax reform. And it kind of gave a very nice picture to have these two guys up there, one a football player, one a basketball player, one a Democrat, one a Republican, and they were both concerned about the same thing, and if there were any disagreements, which there were rarely in this context, they were openly expressed, but they were both headed in the right direction. And people would look at this and they'd say, you know, that's the way it should be.
Kemp Republicans exist, and they are people that believe we got to have something to say to everybody. That we can't be a 51% majority nation, that the Republican Party has to be able to have a message for African Americans and Hispanics and union members and inner city folks. And maybe we don't get it all right, maybe not every policy is perfect, but that if we are not constantly striving to have a message to communicate to everybody, we're failing.
We're going to ask for the support of every single American. Our appeal of boundless opportunity crosses every barrier of geography, race, and belief in America. We're not going to leave anybody out of this opportunity society. We may not get every vote, but we'll speak to every heart. In word and action, we will represent the entire American family. That's what we must be all about.
That's right. That's good. Damn up. We need you to come on back home too, brother. We need you to come on back home. I got 1 hour, 1 hour. Yeah. Don't try. I'm not trying. I'm not taking a picture of you looking like that. Hell no. Get yourself together. I almost fell off the porch. Thank you, baby. Very much. Come on, baby. It's time to stop this madness. How you doing, my brother? How you feeling? That's me, brother. That's my name, brother. You ready to shut it down, brother? Right. We shutting it down. And we letting our brothers know that this is more. You understand? You know, they don't advertise it. They just, I mean, it takes certain networks to say, hey, we're going to put this out there. That's right. You know, they agree to work. They work. The fellas going to really help. So, make it better. In the city of Trenton, it's a historical event. We prove that we, the community, can fight back and take back our streets. It's only a question of laying aside the rhetoric and getting down to business. What you see on my left lapel is a button of a great historical event that took place in America. And it was the meeting of the godfather of the civil rights movement and the meeting of a great man, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and Dr. Martin Luther King. They came together to discuss the problems in our community. But you know, now today in America, we are left with the children of that movement. The Reverend Jesse Jackson on the political stand and the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. What I'm trying to say, my beloved brothers and sisters, that the time has come for us to come together as a people. Black, Hispanic, and poor whites. But I'm putting emphasis at this moment on the black community because that charity starts at home first and then spreads abroad. We must face the real fact. The things that Martin Luther King also preached time and time again, that we as a people shall reach the promised land. But we must reach it with brotherhood and sisterhood and working together to fight this deadly monster that we face today. What I'm trying to say simply is that it's going to take Muslims and Christians alike to come together and stand up and fight for each other. It's going to take unity. It's going to take love. And all we're saying to those individuals that are out there involved in selling drugs, that we will no longer, under no circumstances whatsoever, as long as we continue to live, allow you to sell this poison to our families. Yes, to our parents, to our older brothers and sisters, and to our babies. The time has come to address this problem. And all I'm trying to say is that this is a new beginning in the city of...
Drug problem in one area of Washington, D.C. prompted residents there yesterday to bypass the police. NBC's Robert Hager reports tonight on the explosive situation that developed.
Police say this rundown apartment complex in inner-city Washington is an open-air market for cocaine and crack. So when a local mosque of Louis Farrakhan's Nation of Islam offered to send its members to patrol against drug dealers, apartment dwellers agreed, even supplied keys so the Muslims could search apartments and examine people they felt didn't belong. But the patrollers became violent when they spotted a suspicious man with a gun. A cameraman from NBC station WRC television ran to record the scene. Then the Muslims turned on the cameraman and reporter Joe Johns.
A bunch of people rushed me, and I closed my eyes, and there were more and more people on top of me. Eventually, I was forced to the ground. I was still holding on to the camera. And at some point, someone was hitting or kicking me in the face, in the eye.
Johns was treated for cuts and a bruised eye. The man who was beaten is in stable condition and charged because he had the gun. One member of the Nation of Islam was arrested for assault. Abdul Alim Muhammad defended the Muslims.
We're not vigilantes. We are vigilant citizens of this community.
But Washington's mayor, Marion Barry, had a warning.
It's unfortunate that this turned into a violent situation. There's no way we can allow citizens to be judge, jury, and prosecutor.
The neighbors want the Muslims to continue their patrols, and police say the Muslims have the right, but have no right to use violence. Robert Hager, NBC News, Washington.
Brother Tim's book, and even in your book, you talk about many of the heroic actions that took place in the Mayfair mansions. But once in your book, you mentioned something, and Brother's going to show your book on the screen again. You mentioned something about a meeting about someone when anytime DC is mentioned about drugs, his name comes up, right? Rayful Edmonds. His name is mentioned, YouTube, whatever. In your book, you spoke about how he actually came to the Mayfair Mansion because this was one of the areas in his territory that he was running. And can you talk about that meeting that took place?
Yes, I certainly will. And I have to say, Brother Tim was right there with me the whole time. And we brought the brothers and we met with him. That brother, and like you said, the people need to do the research on him and do a little history search. Rayful Edwards. He was one of the notorious drug dealers in Washington, D.C. at that time. And then most of his men, most of his soldiers was in Mayfair Mansion in Paradise, working, selling their drugs. But when we came in as a team, we was always taught with our training. We sat down and talked to whoever's in charge of the opposition. Because remember I told you at the beginning, our training, we was taught, fear no one but God alone. So we called Brother Edward, we sent a message to him, told him we wanted to meet with him. He came. He brought his troops with him. We had our army. We was unarmed. He brought his men, they had arms. But we didn't feel nothing about that. We sat down at a table like men. And we talked to brother straight. And we told brother, look, we are here now. This is our territory. We came to save our people. And he looked at us kind of strange like, because he wasn't expecting us to talk like that. And we told him what God told us to do. And after we finished, the brother looked at us. He stood up, his men stood up. I stood up, the brother stood. And he said to us, he's leaving. He didn't give us not one controversial word. And he left as a brother, sure, because he knew he was looking at God's men. That's just the truth. And he left and went about his business. And from that day to this day, we never had an encounter again. And all his troops left with no problem. That's nothing but the truth. And that's because the Spirit of God is on the Nation of Islam, coming from the Honorable Louis Farrakhan. That's just real. And that's why when Brother Tim said it and you said it, the media came from all over the world because that was another miracle that took place because we followed the instruction of the Jesus that's in our midst, the Honorable Louis Farrakhan. You can take it or let it alone. That's the actual facts. And our brother left, and you can see the history is written. He left with no problem.
My mentor, my model in politics has always been Jack Kemp. He is the man, the myth, and the legend.
Over the past 30 years, no Republican, except for Ronald Reagan, meant more to the Republican Party than Jack Kemp.
It is not enough to be against something.
Can ideas and an approach first proposed more than a generation ago lift us out of our current crisis?
I am convinced the only way to replace an erroneous idea is with the power of a right idea.
Never give up. Never give up. That's a big part of his legacy.
This is the life of a political visionary, told by the people who knew him best.
I told Jack once, if you believed in original sin, you'd be president.
He was a upbeat, optimistic, forward-looking politician that was always looking to grow the pie, not slice the pie up in little pieces.
Jack was the preacher who thought he could save every sinner. If he could get to them, you could be made to see the light.
He believed in the fundamental goodness of everyone, and that made him the most admirable and the most frustrating political figure I've ever dealt with, often at the same time.
Deep in the DNA of the American society, there's a desire to resurrect Kempism. People want leaders who transcend those petty differences and give us a vision of an improved future.
Fair policies related to low-income residents, showing as they trained in 12 sites across the country that residents could be their own owners and managers, such as Kimmy Gray here in the District of Columbia at Kenilworth Parkside. They had already sent over 600 young people to colleges, took over management of the property, becoming their own maintenance men and renovators and managers, and according to an independent accounting firm, saved taxpayers millions of dollars, increased rental collections 77%, and cut crime and welfare dependency in half. Congress took note. With the help of the Center, amendments were crafted to the Housing Act in 1987, sponsored by Jack Kemp, Walter Fauntroy, Republican and Democrat, that passed 419 to 1, giving residents the right to manage and own their own housing and reinvest surplus revenues in their own community.
A credible, intelligent physician will first of all attempt to do that which is least intrusive to your body. But what we do traditionally in helping poor people in neighborhoods is we apply the moral equivalent of a transplant. What government does when there's a problem, if there's pregnancy problem, let's parachute in a program. If someone is unemployed, there's a program. Instead of saying, let's look at the remedy that's closest to the problem. At the Center for Neighborhood Enterprise, we go into low-income, high-crime, drug-infested neighborhoods, and we ask questions that professional service industry and scholars never ask of poor people. We ask them not how many children are dropping out of school or in jail and on drugs. We want to know how many people are raising children that have not succumbed to the lure of drug addiction, have not become predators. And once we find them, we apply Miracle-Gro in the form of training and technical assistance. And so we are able to grow remedies that are indigenous to these low-income, high-crime neighborhoods by reaching out to grassroots leaders that are in poverty but not of poverty. They're in drug-addicted neighborhoods, but they're not of those neighborhoods. In one city in New Jersey, pizza companies couldn't deliver in low and high crime black neighborhoods because of the crime. Well, a neighborhood group got together and got some 18 and 20-year-old kids who set up a pizza delivery business. They said it's warm, it's good, it's from the hood. And they partnered with one of the pizza companies who taught them how to sell pizzas, and they delivered those pizzas inside as their business, and it prospered because no one would stick them up because they were from the community. The reason that AIDS is so devastating is because it destroys their body's ability to heal itself. Well, we look at our grassroots leaders as antibodies. They are indigenous to the body. They are closest to the source of disease. And so therefore, if you strengthen the body's immune system, the body will heal itself.
Thank you.